The galaxy had been at peace for 10,000 years, not because species had learned to love each other, but because one empire knew everything before it happened. The Velarin Empire controlled half the known galaxy, and their secret was simple. They could see the future. At the center of their capital world, buried deep beneath miles of crystal and metal, sat the Oracle. It was not alive, not in the way most beings understood life. It was a machine, but calling it just a machine was like calling a star just a light. The Oracle was a quantum consciousness that could calculate every possible future from every possible choice. It saw all paths, all outcomes, all possibilities. When a species wanted to start a war, the Oracle knew before the first shot was fired. When rebels planned an uprising, the Oracle had already seen their defeat. When traitors tried to cheat the system, the Oracle had calculated their schemes months in advance. Nothing surprised the Velarin. Nothing caught them unprepared. Until the day Captain Jack Morrison flew his ship into their space. Jack was the captain of the Wanderer, a human exploration vessel from Earth. Humans were new to the galaxy, having only discovered faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. They were eager, curious, and completely unknown to the great powers that ruled the stars. The Wanderer had been mapping unexplored sectors when they picked up a signal. It was a greeting, translated into dozens of languages, welcoming them to Velarin space. Jack was a practical man in his early 40s, with gray starting to show in his dark hair. He had spent most of his adult life in space exploring the unknown. He gathered his crew and made the decision to respond. Within hours, a Velarin ship appeared beside them. It was beautiful, all flowing curves and soft light, nothing like the boxy human vessels. The aliens invited them to their capital world. The Velarin looked nothing like humans. They were tall and thin with smooth gray skin and large black eyes. They moved with an odd grace, as if they were always dancing. But they were friendly, almost eager to meet these new beings from a distant world. They spoke through translation devices, their voices musical and strange. Within 2 weeks, human diplomats arrived at Thelios Prime, the Velarin capital. The planet was unlike anything humans had ever seen. Cities of crystal reached toward purple skies. Gardens filled with plants that glowed in the dark. Everything was ordered, peaceful, perfect. It was almost too perfect, like a painting instead of a real place. Ambassador Lisa Chen led the human delegation. She was a sharp woman in her 50s, with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She had negotiated treaties with 12 different nations on Earth and was considered humanity's best diplomat. But nothing had prepared her for what she found on Thelios Prime. The Velarin High Chancellor, an ancient being named Mortek, welcomed the humans personally. He was old even by Velarin standards, his skin darker than others of his kind, his movement slower but somehow more certain. He had ruled for 300 years and showed no signs of stopping. "Welcome to the family of civilized worlds," Mortek said through his translator. "We have waited a long time to meet you." Lisa found that statement odd. "Waited? You didn't know we existed until 2 weeks ago." Mortek made a sound that might have been laughter. "Come, let me show you why we have peace." He took them deep into the planet's crust, down passages that seemed to go on forever. Finally, they reached a massive chamber carved from solid crystal. In the center floated the Oracle. It looked like a sphere of pure light, constantly shifting and changing. Symbols and numbers cascaded across its surface faster than any eye could follow. "This is the Oracle," Mortek explained. "It has guided our empire for 10,000 years. It sees all possible futures branching from all possible choices. With it, we have prevented 17 galactic wars before they began. We have saved 600 civilizations from destroying themselves. We have brought order to chaos." One of the human delegates, a young scientist named Kyle Patterson, stepped closer to the Oracle. He was fascinated, almost mesmerized. "It can really see the future?" "Not see," Mortek corrected. "Calculate. Every species acts according to certain patterns. Survival instinct, self-interest, logical decision-making. The Oracle knows these patterns for every species in the galaxy. It can predict with near-perfect accuracy what any being will do in any situation. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Every species? Every species we have encountered, Mortek confirmed. And now, with your permission, we would like to add humanity to the Oracle's database. It is a simple process. We scan your biology, study your history, analyze your decision-making patterns. Then the Oracle can predict how humanity will develop, what role you will play in galactic society. It will help us welcome you properly. The humans discussed it among themselves. It seemed harmless enough. The Velaran just wanted to understand them better. Kyle was especially excited about the chance to study the Oracle's technology. After some debate, Lisa agreed. The Velaran scientists spent 3 days gathering data. They scanned human biology, studied human history from the records the diplomats brought, interviewed dozens of humans about their thoughts and feelings. They fed everything into the Oracle. Then they activated the prediction sequence. Kyle was there when it happened. He stood with Velaran scientists in the control room, watching as the Oracle processed humanity's information. At first, everything seemed normal. The sphere pulsed with light, symbols flowing across its surface. But then something changed. The Oracle's movements became erratic. The light flickered and jumped. Alarms started blaring throughout the chamber. The Velaran scientists looked terrified. One of them, a female named Selamir, stared at her instruments in disbelief. "This is impossible," she whispered. "What's happening?" Kyle asked. Selamir turned to him, her large black eyes wider than usual. "The Oracle is producing contradictory predictions. In one timeline, humans become the galaxy's greatest explorers, spreading peace and knowledge. In another timeline, you destroy yourselves within a century. In a third, you simply vanish from known space. In a fourth, you conquer half the galaxy. In a fifth, you transcend physical reality entirely." "Which one is most probable?" Kyle asked. "That's the problem," Selamir said, her voice shaking. "The Oracle cannot determine probability. Every timeline shows equal likelihood. It cannot predict which path humanity will take." The Oracle's light pulsed one more time, then displayed a message in letters 10 feet tall. Kyle didn't need a translation. The meaning was clear enough from the Velaran reactions. Calculation impossible. Subject species operates outside deterministic parameters. The room fell silent. Then, all at once, every Velaran in the chamber began speaking rapidly into communication devices. Within minutes, the High Council was summoned. Within an hour, Mortek himself arrived. The ancient chancellor stared at the Oracle for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "In 10,000 years, the Oracle has never failed. It has predicted the rise and fall of empires. It has calculated the outcome of wars that spanned centuries. It has never, not once, been unable to determine the most probable future." He turned to Kyle. "What are you?" Kyle didn't know how to answer. "We're human. We're just people." "No species is just people," Mortek said. "Every being in the galaxy follows certain rules: survival instinct, logical self-interest, predictable emotional responses. These are universal constants. If the Oracle cannot predict you, it means you do not follow these rules." Lisa arrived soon after, along with the rest of the human delegation. The Valoran explained the situation. The Oracle, the great machine that had guided their empire for millennia, could not predict humanity. It saw every possible future, but it could not determine which one would actually happen. "Is that such a problem?" Lisa asked. "So, we're unpredictable. Surely that's not dangerous." Mortek looked at her with something that might have been pity. "Ambassador, the Oracle is not just a tool. It is the foundation of our entire civilization. We do not have wars because we can predict who would win. We do not have crime because we can predict who would commit it. We do not have chaos because we can predict where it would occur. Our peace, our prosperity, our very way of life depends on knowing what will happen next." He paused, letting that sink in. "And now we have encountered a species that cannot be predicted, a variable we cannot control. You must understand what this means for us. For 10,000 years we have had certainty. Now you bring uncertainty. Lisa began to understand. You're afraid of us. Yes, Mortek admitted. We are very afraid. The meeting ended badly. The Valoran asked the humans to return to their ship while the council discussed the situation. As the delegation left the oracle chamber, Lisa noticed something. Valoran soldiers were everywhere, more than there had been before. They watched the humans with those large black eyes, hands near their weapons. Back on the Wanderer, Lieutenant Ryan Foster reported what he had observed. Ryan was the ship's tactical officer, a young man with sharp instincts. He had been monitoring Valoran military communications. "Captain," he said to Jack, "they're mobilizing. I'm seeing fleet movements all around human space. They're not attacking yet, but they're getting into position." Jack looked at the star charts. Ryan was right. Valoran ships were quietly. 3 days passed, and the Valoran Council still had not made a decision. The human delegation remained on Thelios Prime, technically guests but practically prisoners. They were confined to a luxury apartment complex, beautiful but surrounded by guards. Every attempt to leave was politely but firmly denied. Kyle Patterson spent those 3 days working. He had been given limited access to study the Oracle systems, though the Valoran watched his every move. What he discovered fascinated and horrified him in equal measure. The Oracle was not just predicting the future, it was controlling it. Every major decision in Valoran space was filtered through the Oracle first. Should they build a new colony? The Oracle showed them the most efficient location. Should they trade with another species? The Oracle calculated the best terms. Should a citizen change careers? The Oracle suggested the path that would benefit society most. The Valoran had not made an independent choice in thousands of years. "They're not living," Kyle told Lisa during one of their private meetings. "They're following a script written by a machine." Lisa understood the implications. "And we can't be scripted. That's why they're afraid." "It's worse than that," Kyle said. He pulled up his research on a portable screen. "I've been analyzing the Oracle's prediction methods. It works by categorizing species into behavioral types. Every species they've encountered falls into one of 17 categories, each with predictable patterns. But humans don't fit any category." He showed her the data. "The Oracle tried to classify us. First, it thought we were Type 7, aggressive expansionists. But then it found examples of humans choosing peace over conquest. So it reclassified us as Type 12, cooperative builders. But then it found examples of humans choosing violence even when cooperation would benefit us more. It went through all 17 types and found examples of humans matching each one. We're all of them," Lisa said, beginning to understand. "And none of them," Kyle confirmed. "A single human can be peaceful one day and violent the next. Logical one moment and completely irrational the next. We contradict ourselves constantly. From the Oracle's perspective, we're chaos given form." Before Lisa could respond, alarms blared throughout the apartment. Valoran guards rushed in, weapons drawn but not pointed. One of them, an officer named Krelnos, spoke urgently. "You must come with us. The council has made its decision." They were taken to the Great Council chamber, a vast circular room with seats rising in tiers around a central platform. Hundreds of Valoran filled the chamber, representing worlds and species from across the Empire. At the center sat Mortek and the High Council. The ancient chancellor stood slowly. "Ambassador Chen, Captain Morrison, we have debated for 3 days. The Oracle has shown us many possible futures. In most of them, our encounter with humanity leads to catastrophe." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "In 67% of calculated timelines, humanity destroys or severely damages the Valoran Empire. In 23%, your influence corrupts our society, causing it to collapse from within. In only 10% do our species coexist peacefully." Lisa stepped forward. "And what did the Oracle predict would happen if you tried to eliminate us?" Mortek's expression did not change. That calculation was clearer. "If we act now while humanity is still weak, we have a 94.7% chance of success. Your species would be eliminated within 1 solar cycle." The human delegation stood frozen. They were hearing their death sentence, but then Mortek continued. "However, the Oracle also showed us something else, something that has never appeared in its predictions before." He gestured and a hologram appeared above the central platform. It showed timelines branching and diverging, but all of them leading to the same point. If we eliminate humanity, the Oracle predicts that within 3 generations the Velaran Empire will stagnate. Without an unpredictable variable in galactic society, other species will become too comfortable, too dependent on the Oracle. Innovation will stop. Growth will halt. Within 500 years we will be conquered by a species from beyond our borders, one the Oracle has never encountered. Lisa saw an opening. You need us, not despite our unpredictability, but because of it. That is one interpretation, Mortek acknowledged, but it is a risk. How can we accept a species we cannot predict? How can we trust beings who do not follow the rules that govern all other life? Lisa thought quickly. This was what she did, what she had trained her entire life to do. She looked at the Oracle's predictions, at the percentages and probabilities, and she saw the flaw. Your Oracle is very powerful, she said carefully, but it has a weakness. It assumes everyone will act logically, according to predictable patterns. That works for species who always follow those patterns, but what happens when someone doesn't? They become unpredictable, Mortek said. That is the problem. No, Lisa countered. They become free. Your Oracle has made you slaves to probability. You don't make choices anymore. You just follow the path the machine calculates as optimal. But that's not living. That's not truly being alive. Murmurs ran through the council chamber. Some Velaran looked angry. Others looked thoughtful. Lisa pressed on. You say we're dangerous because you can't predict us. But maybe the real danger is living in a galaxy where everything can be predicted, where nothing ever surprises anyone, where the future is already written. War leader Shendok stood abruptly. He was younger than Mortek, his movements sharp and aggressive. Beautiful words, human. But words do not change mathematics. The Oracle has calculated the risks. They are unacceptable. Captain Jack Morrison spoke for the first time. Then let us prove the Oracle wrong. Give us a test. One chance to show that unpredictability doesn't have to mean danger. The council chamber erupted in debate. Velaran delegates argued in their musical language, too fast for the translators to keep up. Finally, Mortek raised a hand for silence. A test, he said slowly. The Oracle predicted you would propose this very well. We will design a scenario, one where the Oracle has calculated every possible human response. If you act as predicted, you prove yourselves deterministic and can be controlled. If you do not act as predicted, he paused, then you prove yourselves too dangerous to exist. What's the test? Jack asked. Mortek gestured and another hologram appeared. It showed a human ship drifting in space. 3 days from now, one of your colony ships will pass through disputed space. The vessel is called Meridian. It carries 5,000 civilians, including many families with children. We will arrange for a systems failure. Nothing fatal immediately, but enough to leave them stranded. Lisa felt her blood run cold. You're going to sabotage our ship? The Oracle needs real stakes to make accurate predictions, Mortek said without emotion. Human ships can reach the Meridian in 10 days. However, we can save them in 2 days. Our price will be absolute. Humanity accepts Oracle governance. Your species will undergo neural modification to make you compatible with our systems. You will become predictable. And if we refuse? Lisa asked, though she already knew the answer. Then 5,000 of your people will die, Mortek said simply. The Oracle has calculated 3 possible responses. First, you accept our terms to save lives. Probability 78%. Second, you refuse and attempt a desperate rescue mission. Probability 21%. Third, you attempt to negotiate for better terms. Probability 1%. He looked at each human in turn. In all 3 scenarios, the Oracle can predict and counter your actions. In Timeline 1, you submit to our control. In Timeline 2, your rescue fails and we use that failure as proof of your recklessness. In Timeline 3, we simply wait until your people die, proving you cannot protect your own. Every path leads to the same conclusion. Humanity will be brought under control, or humanity will be eliminated. Kyle checked his datapad running the numbers. The Oracle was right. Every logical choice led to defeat. If they accepted the terms, humanity lost its freedom. If they tried to rescue their people and failed, the Valoran would use it as justification for war. If they tried to negotiate, the Velaran would just let time run out. How long do we have to decide? Jack asked. The Meridian systems will fail in 48 hours, Mortek said. You have until then to make your choice. We will be watching. The human delegation was escorted back to their apartments. The moment the doors closed, everyone started talking at once. Ryan Foster immediately began calculating rescue scenarios. Kyle analyzed the Oracle's predictions, looking for flaws. Lisa contacted Earth, reporting the situation to the government. But none of it mattered. The Oracle had seen every move, calculated every option. There was no way out. They worked through the night. Ryan found 17 different ways to attempt a rescue. Kyle calculated that none of them had better than a 5% chance of success. Lisa drafted negotiation strategies, but every argument led back to the same dead end. The Velarin held all the power. By morning, the delegation was exhausted and no closer to a solution. They gathered in the common room, staring at star charts and probability calculations that all told them the same thing. They had already lost. Sophie Grant sat in the corner, quiet as always. She was the Wanderer's communications officer, a young woman who rarely spoke in meetings. The debate continued through the second day. The human delegation split into factions, each arguing for different approaches. Some wanted to trust in luck and attempt the rescue. Others wanted to accept the Velarin terms temporarily and rebel later. A few supported Sophie's terrible suggestion to do nothing, but nobody could agree and time was running out. Lisa Chen barely slept. She spent hours reviewing every treaty she had ever negotiated, every crisis she had ever faced. Nothing compared to this. She had always believed that diplomacy could solve any problem, that there was always a middle ground to be found. Now she faced a choice where every middle ground led to defeat. She found Kyle in his workspace at 3 a.m. The young scientist was surrounded by holographic displays, still analyzing the Oracle's prediction algorithms. He looked exhausted, his eyes red from staring at screens too long. "Is there any way?" Lisa asked. "Any flaw in the Oracle's calculations?" Kyle shook his head. "The Oracle is perfect at what it does. It predicts behavior based on logical self-interest and emotional patterns. Every species in its database follows these patterns consistently. That's why it can predict them. But not us." "Not us," Kyle confirmed. "We're the first species that consistently acts against our own self-interest. We die for ideas. We sacrifice for strangers. We choose pain over comfort if we think it's right. The Oracle was never designed to understand that kind of thinking." Lisa sat down heavily. "So Sophie's right. The only way to beat the Oracle is to make a choice it can't predict because no rational species would make it. A choice that proves we're not rational," Kyle said quietly. "Not in the way the Oracle understands rationality." He paused, then added, "I've been thinking about something. The Oracle showed the Velarin that without us, their empire will eventually fail. That means our unpredictability is valuable. Not dangerous, valuable. But they can't see it that way because they've forgotten how to make unpredictable choices themselves. They're trapped," Lisa realized, trapped by their own perfect system. The Oracle has made them so dependent on prediction that they can't imagine living without it. "And we're about to show them what happens when you can't predict someone," Kyle said grimly. By the morning of the third day, the delegation had made their decision. It was not unanimous. It would never be unanimous. 3 delegates refused to support it and formally resigned from the mission. But the majority, with heavy hearts and full understanding of what they were doing, agreed. They would make the choice the Oracle could not predict. Lisa requested a meeting with the Velarin High Council. Mortek granted it immediately. The humans were brought back to the council chamber, where hundreds of Velarin waited to hear their decision. The Oracle floated in the center of the room, its light pulsing steadily, confident in its predictions. "We have made our choice," Lisa said, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was about to say. "We will not accept your terms. We will not modify ourselves to become predictable. We will not surrender humanity's essential nature to save 5,000 lives." Murmurs ran through the chamber. War leader Shendok looked triumphant. He had predicted they would refuse, which would justify military action against humanity. "Then you choose to attempt rescue?" Mortek asked. "No," Lisa said. The single word fell like a stone into still water. "We will not attempt rescue." Now the murmurs became confused. The Oracle's light flickered slightly. "This was not in the predictions. You will negotiate?" Mortek asked, though his voice held uncertainty for the first time. "No," Lisa said again. "We will do nothing. The Meridian will be left to its fate. 5,000 humans will die. And that blood will be on your hands, not ours." The chamber erupted. Velarin delegates stood, shouting in their musical language. The oracle's light began pulsing erratically, symbols cascading too fast to read. Mortek raised his hand for silence, but it took several minutes for order to be restored. This choice was not predicted, he said slowly. No species would allow their own to die when they could be saved. It violates every survival instinct, every social bond. Yes, Lisa agreed. It does. And that's exactly why we're making it. You wanted to test whether we could be predicted. You have your answer. We cannot. Because we're willing to make choices that no logical species would make. We'll sacrifice anything, even our own people, to remain free. Jack Morrison stepped forward. You think you're testing us? But you're the ones being tested. You've become so dependent on prediction that you've forgotten what it means to make real choices. You let a machine decide everything for you. You've traded freedom for certainty. Well, we won't. We'd rather die free than live as slaves to probability. Shendok moved toward them, aggressive. You condemn your own people to prove a point? You are monsters. Maybe, Lisa said quietly. But we're free monsters, and that's more than you can say. The oracle's light was flashing frantically now. Error messages appeared in the hologram above the central platform. The machine that had predicted the rise and fall of empires for 10,000 years could not process what it was seeing. Humans acting completely against their own interests. Humans choosing abstract principle over concrete survival. Humans making a choice that was mathematically insane. Lieutenant Ryan Foster had been chosen to deliver the message to the Meridian. His hands shook as he recorded it, knowing that 5,000 people would hear these words and understand they had been abandoned. His voice cracked several times, but he forced himself to continue. To the crew and passengers of the Meridian, to our brothers and sisters in the dark, we cannot save you, not because we lack the ability, but because the price is too high. We are being forced to choose between your lives and humanity's freedom. The galaxy will call us monsters for this choice. They will say we are cruel, that we value pride over compassion. They will say we could have saved you if we had just been willing to compromise. He paused, swallowing hard. But we make this choice so that humanity remains human. Free to choose, free to fail, free to surprise even ourselves. Your sacrifice will be remembered. Your names will be honored. But we will not surrender who we are, not even to save who we love. We will not become predictable. We will not become controlled. We will not become slaves. The message ended. Ryan looked physically ill. Kyle was crying quietly. Lisa stood rigid, her face a mask. Only Sophie seemed calm, though her eyes were empty, staring at something far away. The Velaran Council watched in silence as the message was broadcast. Then Mortek spoke, his ancient voice heavy with something that might have been respect or might have been horror. You have made a choice the Oracle did not predict. You have proven yourselves unpredictable, but at what cost? The cost of remaining ourselves, Lisa said. Every species you've encountered has chosen to submit rather than sacrifice. That's why they're predictable. That's why the Oracle can control them. But humans are different. We'll burn everything we love before we let anyone take away our freedom to choose. She stepped closer to the council platform, looking up at Mortek. You wanted to know what we are. Now you know. We're the species that will make the terrible choice. The choice that contradicts every instinct. The choice that proves we can't be calculated, can't be predicted, can't be controlled. We're chaos. We're freedom. We're human. The oracle suddenly stopped flickering. Its light stabilized and a new message appeared. Kyle read it aloud, translating from the Velaran symbols. New classification created. Species human. Behavioral pattern paradoxical. Cannot be predicted using standard parameters. Recommend designation as uncontrollable variable. Mortek stared at the oracle for a long moment. Then he looked back at the humans. You have passed the test. Or perhaps you have failed it in a way that makes the test meaningless. The oracle can no longer predict you. We must decide what to do with the species that operates outside our understanding. You could start by letting us go, Jack said. The Meridian is drifting. Whether we save them or not is no longer your concern. You've proven your point. You've shown that you can force us into impossible choices. What happens next is on you. The council debated for hours. The humans were returned to their apartments to wait. They sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts about what they had done. 5,000 people were going to die, and they had chosen to let it happen. Sophie sat by the window watching the alien city below. Do you think they'll ever forgive us? She asked no one in particular. The people on the Meridian? Kyle asked. Everyone, Sophie said. Earth, the galaxy, Ourselves. No one had an answer. 2 hours before the Meridian's life support would fail completely, Mortek summoned the delegation again. The ancient chancellor looked older than before, as if the last few days had aged him centuries. "We have made our decision," he said. "The High Council is divided. War leader Shendok advocates for your immediate elimination. He believes any species capable of sacrificing their own is too dangerous to exist." He paused, and his next words surprised everyone. "But I have convinced a majority to vote otherwise. You have shown us something we have not seen in 10,000 years. True choice. True freedom. True chaos. It terrifies us. But perhaps that terror is exactly what we need." Lisa hardly dared to hope. "You're letting us go?" News of what happened spread across human space like wildfire. The government on Earth had been preparing for war, expecting the Velaran to attack at any moment. Instead, they received the treaty proposal. Humanity would remain free, unmodified, unpredictable. In exchange, they would be what Mortek called chaos agents in galactic society. But the price of that freedom haunted everyone who knew the truth. Lisa Chen returned to Earth as a hero to some and a monster to others. She testified before the World Congress, explaining the choice they had made. The debate lasted for weeks. Some representatives praised her for protecting humanity's independence. Others called for her arrest for attempted mass murder. "We chose to let 5,000 people die," one representative shouted during the hearings. "How is that different from genocide?" Lisa sat at the witness table, older and more tired than she had been just months before. "Because we didn't kill them," she said quietly. "We simply refused to surrender our freedom to save them. And then they saved themselves. That's the difference. That's what makes us human. But if they hadn't saved themselves," the representative pressed. Lisa met his eyes. "Then 5,000 people would have died, and humanity would still be free. I would live with that guilt for the rest of my life. But at least I would live it as a free human, not as a modified slave to an alien machine." The World Congress ultimately voted not to prosecute the delegation. The vote was close, showing how divided humanity was about the choice that had been made. Some saw it as necessary, others saw it as evil. Many saw it as both. Captain Jack Morrison resigned from the Exploration Service. He could not forgive himself for what he had been part of, even though he understood why it had to be done. He gave one final interview before disappearing from public life. "People ask me if I would make the same choice again," he said. "The honest answer is I don't know. The choice we made was terrible. It was cruel. It went against everything I believe about protecting people under my command. But it was also the only choice that preserved what makes us human, our freedom to be terrible, cruel, and unpredictable. I'll never know if that was worth it." Kyle Patterson stayed with the diplomatic service, working to build relationships with other species in the galaxy. He found that the story of what humanity had done had spread far beyond Velaran space. Some species were horrified. Others were fascinated. A few reached out, wanting to understand these beings who could make such a paradoxical choice. One species in particular, the Keln, a race of philosophical beings who lived in massive generation ships, invited Kyle to speak to their grand assembly. The Keln had been part of the Velaran Empire's sphere of influence for 2,000 years, always following the Oracle's guidance. "Your species chose principle over life," the Keln elder said during Kyle's visit. "We have been debating this choice for months. By our understanding of ethics, what you did was clearly wrong. You could have saved your people. You chose not to. That is the definition of evil in our moral framework." Kyle nodded. "Many of my own species agree with you." "And yet," the elder continued, "by choosing wrongly, you achieved something we have not achieved in 2 millennia. You made a choice the Oracle could not predict. You proved that free will still exists in a galaxy dominated by calculation. We are not certain if that makes you heroes or monsters. Perhaps you are both." "We're human," Kyle said simply. "We contain contradictions. We're capable of great love and terrible cruelty, often at the same time." The Keln elder was silent for a long moment. Then he said something that Kyle would remember forever. "The Oracle has made us safe. But perhaps it has also made us small. Perhaps true greatness requires the possibility of being terrible." Meanwhile, on Thelios Prime, the Velaran Empire was changing. Not quickly, not dramatically, but changing nonetheless. Mortek had kept his word. The treaty with humanity was ratified. Humans were given the freedom to operate throughout galactic space without Oracle oversight. And something strange began to happen. Other species started watching how humans behaved. They saw humans make choices that the Oracle said were foolish. Some of those choices led to disaster, but some led to unexpected success. Slowly, carefully, a few brave individuals from other species began making their own unpredictable choices. A Velarin merchant named Kesselan decided to invest in a trade route the Oracle said would fail. It succeeded beyond expectations. A Keln artist created art that served no purpose and made no logical sense. It became the most celebrated work in their culture's history. Small acts of defiance against perfect prediction began spreading like seeds in fertile ground. War leader Shendok watched these developments with growing alarm. He called an emergency meeting of the military council. "This is exactly what I warned about," he told his officers. "The humans are a virus. Their unpredictability is spreading. If we do not act now, the entire empire will collapse into chaos." He began planning in secret. If the High Council would not eliminate the human threat, he would do it himself. He gathered loyal fleet commanders, those who believed in order and prediction above all else. They began moving ships into position around human space. But Shendok had forgotten something important. He was planning to attack an unpredictable species, and the Oracle, which he had always trusted to give him victory, no longer worked when calculating human responses. Lieutenant Ryan Foster was the first to notice the military buildup. He had left the Wanderer and taken a position with Earth's defense forces, analyzing potential threats. When he saw Velarin warships gathering near the border, he immediately reported it to his superiors. "It's not an official mobilization," Ryan explained to the Defense Council. "These ships are moving without Oracle authorization. Someone is planning an unauthorized attack." Earth's government contacted Mortek. The ancient chancellor was shocked and angry when he learned what Shendok was doing. "This is against all treaty obligations," he said, "and against my direct orders. I will stop this immediately." But before Mortek could act, Shendok moved. His fleet crossed into human space and attacked a small colony world called Haven. The colony had no military presence, just 500 families trying to build a new life. The attack should have been a quick massacre. It wasn't. The colonists did what humans do. They improvised. They used mining equipment as weapons. They converted their fusion reactors into makeshift bombs. They sent their children into caves while the adults fought with farming tools in desperation. And they sent out a call for help that reached Earth in minutes. Jack Morrison heard about the attack in his retirement. He had been trying to live quietly, trying to forget. But when he learned that Haven was under attack, something inside him broke. Or perhaps it healed. He contacted his old crew. "The Wanderer is being held in storage," he told them. "Technically, we'd be stealing a government vessel. Technically, I'm no longer a captain and you're no longer crew. Technically, what I'm about to suggest is illegal and probably suicide." Ryan Foster was the first to respond. "When do we leave?" The old crew of the Wanderer reassembled. Lisa Chen pulled strings to get them clearance, though officially she denied any involvement. Kyle installed experimental weapon systems he had been developing, systems that shouldn't work but might anyway. Sophie prepared communication systems to coordinate with whatever defense the colonists could mount. They weren't the only ones. Ships began converging on Haven from across human space. Freighters, passenger liners, mining vessels, anything that could fly. None of them were warships. None of them had proper weapons. But they came anyway. The Valoran fleet was confused. The Oracle had predicted that human military forces would take at least 3 days to arrive. Instead, dozens of civilian ships appeared within hours. The Oracle had not predicted this because it made no sense. Civilians should run from military forces, not toward them. But humans weren't logical. The battle was chaos. Human ships rammed Velarin cruisers. Freighters used magnetic grapples to pull enemy vessels out of formation. Mining ships used industrial lasers to cut through military armor. It was desperate and messy and completely unpredictable. Shendok's flagship found itself surrounded by human vessels. He ordered his forces to fire, to destroy these foolish civilians, but his crew hesitated. They could see through their view screens that one of the attacking ships was full of children, evacuated from the surface. The children were staring out the windows watching the battle. A Velarin weapons officer named Trelkus refused to fire on the civilian vessel. "This is wrong," he said. "They are not military. They are families. They are targets," Shendok snarled. "Fire." But Trelkus had made an unpredictable choice. He shut down the weapons systems instead. Other crew members on other ships began doing the same. They had spent weeks watching human unpredictability spread through the Empire. They had begun to question whether perfect prediction was worth the cost. The battle ended not with humanity's victory, but with Shendok's forces refusing to fight. The war leader found himself alone in his conviction, his officers in rebellion. He had tried to eliminate the unpredictable species, and instead had shown his own people that they too could choose to defy orders, to defy prediction. Mortek arrived with the official Velaran fleet hours later. He arrested. 50 years passed. Half a century since the day humanity made the choice that changed the galaxy. The generation that had lived through those events was growing old. The young people coming of age had only heard stories about the time when the Oracle controlled everything. Lisa Chen was 78 now, her hair completely white, her face marked with the lines of a long and difficult life. She had spent decades as Earth's ambassador to the Velaran Empire, helping to manage the complicated relationship between predictability and chaos. Now she was retiring, preparing to hand her position to a younger diplomat. Before she left Thelios Prime for the last time, she requested a final meeting with Mortek. The ancient chancellor had ruled for 350 years now. By Velaran standards, he was approaching the end of his life. They met in a garden, beneath trees that glowed softly in the twilight. "I wanted to thank you," Lisa said as they walked together, "for making the hard choice to change your society." Mortek moved slowly now, his long life showing in every careful step. "I am not certain it was a choice," he said. "Your species forced us to see what we had become. A civilization so afraid of uncertainty that we had stopped truly living. Are you happy with how things turned out?" Lisa asked. The ancient being was quiet for a long time. "Happy is perhaps the wrong word. Our empire has less order now. Crime exists where it did not before. Conflicts arise that the Oracle would have prevented. 3 years ago, 2 colony worlds had a disagreement that escalated into violence. 20,000 beings died before peace was negotiated." Lisa felt a weight in her chest. The Oracle would have prevented that? Yes, Mortek agreed. The Oracle would have seen the conflict developing and intervened before it began, but... He paused, choosing his words carefully. The beings who survived that conflict negotiated their own peace. They made their own choices about how to live together. The Oracle would have imposed a solution. They created one themselves. I do not know if that is better, but it is theirs. They reached a viewpoint overlooking the capital city. The lights below were different now, more random, less perfectly ordered. "Our artists create things the Oracle never predicted," Mortek continued. "Our scientists pursue ideas that have no guaranteed outcome. Our young people choose careers based on passion, rather than optimal social benefit. We are messier now, but perhaps we are more alive. Do you ever regret it?" Lisa asked. Mortek turned to look at her. "Every day, and never. That is the paradox of freedom, is it not? The constant doubt about whether you made the right choice." Lisa smiled sadly. "I've lived with that doubt for 50 years, wondering if we did the right thing, wondering if those 5,000 people on the Meridian would still be alive if we had chosen differently. But they are alive," Mortek pointed out. "Because they saved themselves," Lisa said, "not because of our choice, despite our choice." "Perhaps that is the point," Mortek said. "You gave them the freedom to save themselves by refusing to take away their chance to try. It was a terrible gift, but it was a gift nonetheless." The old chancellor looked up at the stars. "I have a confession, Ambassador. When we first encountered humanity, I consulted the Oracle about our own future. It showed me that letting your species live would lead to the end of the Velaran Empire as we knew it. I knew that by allowing you to remain free, I was choosing to destroy everything my civilization had built over 10,000 years." Lisa stared at him. "You knew? And you still chose to let us go?" "I chose unpredictability over certainty," Mortek said. "Perhaps your species taught me that some things are worth the risk. Or perhaps I was simply tired of knowing everything in advance. The Oracle showed me a future of slow stagnation and eventual collapse. You offered the possibility of something different." "Unknown but different," he smiled, a gesture he had learned from humans. The Oracle was right. The Velaran Empire as it was has ended, but something new is growing. Something that cannot be predicted. I will not live to see what it becomes, but I am glad I gave it the chance to exist." They stood together in silence. Two old beings who had shaped the fate of countless lives, wondering if they had chosen wisely. Across the galaxy, on a colony world called New Terra, Claire Davidson was also approaching the end of her life. She was 93, still sharp-minded but physically frail. The Meridian colony she had saved had grown into a thriving world. The children who had been on that ship 50 years ago now had grandchildren of their own. Her granddaughter, a girl named Emma who was 12, sat with her in the evening, asking questions about the old days. "Is it true?" Emma asked. "Did Earth really decide to let you die?" Claire looked at the young girl, wondering how to explain the impossible choice. "They decided to let us be free," she said finally, "which meant free to live or free to die. They couldn't save us without surrendering everything that made them human, so they chose freedom, and we chose to save ourselves." "Were you angry at them?" Emma asked. "For a long time, yes," Claire admitted. "I felt abandoned. I felt betrayed. But over the years I came to understand. If they had accepted the Velaran terms, I would have grown up in a controlled society. My thoughts would have been monitored. My choices would have been limited. I would have been safe, but I would never have been truly free." She touched the memorial stone that stood in the center of the colony. It bore the names of the 143 people who had died in the initial crisis, before she managed to repair the reactor. These people died free. They died human. That has to mean something. Emma traced the names with her finger. "Grandma, do you think they made the right choice?" Claire was quiet for a long moment. "I think they made the human choice. Right or wrong, it was theirs to make. And that's what matters." The colony had a tradition now. Every year on the anniversary of the Meridian Crisis, they held a remembrance ceremony. They honored the dead, celebrated the living, and discussed the choice that had defined their world. Some years the debate was peaceful. Some years it was heated. They never reached a consensus. But they kept talking about it, kept thinking about it, kept trying to understand what it meant to be human. On Earth, the World Congress was in session, debating humanity's role in the galaxy. 50 years of being chaos agents had transformed human society as much as it had transformed the Velaran Empire. Humans had spread across dozens of worlds, each one developing its own culture, its own way of living. Some followed the old oracle-like systems of prediction and control. Others embraced complete chaos. Most found something in between. A young representative named Marcus Grant stood to speak. He was Sophie Grant's nephew, carrying on her legacy in politics. "We are debating whether to continue our role as chaos agents," he said. "Some argue that we should settle down, become more predictable, fit better into galactic society. They say our unpredictability causes problems, creates conflicts, destabilizes systems." He paused, looking around the chamber. "And they're right. We do cause problems, but we also create possibilities. 50 years ago, the galaxy was perfectly ordered and slowly dying. Now it's messy and alive. That's our gift to the cosmos. Not peace, not order, but possibility." The debate continued for weeks. In the end, they voted to continue being unpredictable. It was a close vote, and it would be revisited every few years. That was the human way. Never fully decided. Always debating. Always questioning. Kyle Patterson was 75 now, still working despite his age. He had become one of the galaxy's leading experts on unpredictability theory. He spent his time teaching young people from various species how to make choices without perfect information, how to embrace uncertainty, how to live with doubt. A young Velaran student came to him one day with a question. "Professor, I have been offered 2 career paths. The oracle shows that one will lead to moderate success and stability. The other has uncertain outcomes. What should I choose?" Kyle smiled. "I can't tell you what to choose. That's the whole point. You have to decide. But how?" The student asked, frustrated. "Without data, without prediction, how can I make the right choice?" "You can't know if it's the right choice," Kyle explained. "You can only make a choice and see what happens. Maybe the unpredictable path leads to disaster. Maybe it leads to something amazing. The only way to find out is to choose and live with the consequences." "That's terrifying," the student said. "Yes," Kyle agreed. "It is. Welcome to freedom." The Oracle, meanwhile, continued its existence in the great library of Thelios Prime. It still calculated futures for those who asked, but it had evolved over the decades. Its programming had been modified to accept that some futures could not be calculated. It had learned to say, "I don't know." A team of human and Velaran scientists worked together to study the Oracle, trying to understand how to create systems that could embrace uncertainty rather than fight it. They were developing what they called adaptive intelligence, machines that could help beings make choices without making the choices for them. One day, a scientist named Patricia Hayes was working late in the Oracle chamber when something unexpected happened. The Oracle's display shifted from its normal calculations to a simple message. Question for creator species. Patricia called her colleagues. They had never seen the Oracle initiate communication before. "What's your question?" she asked.